is just things that we have realized over our time together, and that from working with couples, that seem to be a common thread, that seem to be something that is, I won't say universal, but it's pretty regularly occurring. We see
Right.
it a lot. And when Renee asked me this question, I thought I misheard her when she said it. When we said we were talking about the topic and what we were going to talk about, she was like, "Well, adultery, or cheating, or however you want to describe it." And I was like, "Okay." But one thing that we realized, because we haven't had this pop up in our relationship, well,
I don't think it
wait,
pops
wait,
up.
wait. I would say this: when we were dating, we did not have cheating, but I think I was accused of cheating once. And I still to this day will say, no, I did not cheat. And that's open to your interpretation, because I was late before. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But one thing, when she said that, I was like, okay, why? She said, no, why you don't cheat? And it kind of threw me off, and I said, why I don't cheat?
Yeah.
And I literally had to think about it, because that requires you to start thinking about what are the things and what are the things that you actually do. And it's not just the men. We know this goes both
Because
ways.
women cheat too.
What is it that you are that is happening in you as an individual that keeps you committed? So, and I would say the very first thing is emotionally stable. And I'm emotionally satisfied, stable in myself, but also satisfied emotionally with Renee from an emotional standpoint. I think when you are dating and you don't start building intimacy in the very beginning of your relationship,
Emotional and spiritual intimacy, not
yes.
just physical intimacy.
And I think sometimes this is an area that is neglected in men first. Not that saying that men are emotionally illiterate or anything like that. I'm just saying it is not something that is taught or is common to men, for men to be emotionally aware, self-aware, because we are taught almost like the polar opposite, to be physically and mentally strong. But when it comes to the emotions, we are taught to suppress those things and keep
Yeah.
those things on the back burner, because it is looked at in society as a
Seen
sign
a
of
week.
weakness.
Yeah.
And it's not, especially when you think about it in the context of your relationship, because when you are in a healthy relationship and you are emotionally satisfied and stable, that will be I would say, a
An
linchpin
anchor.
and anchor in keeping you from going outside of your relationship or committing adultery or infidelity, or however you want to describe it. It keeps you satisfied here first.
Yeah, but it starts with here. Even though for us, when we got married, we were not saved. And so I think that it's important to understand, and I believe this, biblical principles work whether you're saved or unsaved. We were unsaved and didn't know Jesus, but we still had character. We still had integrity. And so I think it's important, just going back to our story, like my parents were never married. My mom was never married
And
to
mine
my
got
dad.
divorced, yeah, at an
And
early
so
age.
it wasn't as if we grew up in this environment where we saw these
Modeled.
principles being modeled. I believe that the Bible says the Lord knew you in your mother's womb and he knitted you. There are certain things about the way you're wired that God put in you because he knew who he called you to be. And so if you don't learn to tap into that, and me and Gil will admit it, we were both different. Even as
Even now, to
teenagers,
this day.
we're so different now. But if we didn't understand that, then when we did get saved, we began to understand why we were different and why God set us apart and why he made us the way. I was never promiscuous. Gil was never promiscuous. So for us, even when it comes to when we work with couples, we know our limitations. We realize that we're not going to try to help someone navigate something that we haven't navigated from a perspective of experience. Now we can tell you what the scriptures say. We can tell you what we've been trained, but a part of it is that we want to make sure that we're helping you in the areas where we're showing you our testimony, because the Bible says you overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. So what we want to do today was to share our testimony of how we have not cheated. And I know people don't believe that and they have a hard time. And the reason why people have a hard time believing people don't cheat it's because they cheat.
And well, not that, just that, but also society. And like Brian said, first, when you're being, thanks Brian for the comment, and Cedric, hey, how you doing?
Hey guys.
When you are emotionally stable and comfortable with the connection that you have with your partner, that is so vital to the health of your overall relationship. I appreciate you putting that in there, Brian, because it is so true. When you are not neglected emotionally, that is going to prevent you from looking outside of the relationship for something that is foundation in your emotions as far as what you're looking for. We don't think about it. We think it's all a physical thing,
It's
and
not.
it's not. A physical is a manifestation of what you're.
It's a symptom.
It's a symptom, or it manifests physically going outside of your relationship because there is deficiencies inside, not just you as an individual, but emotionally that you're having, that you thinking the physical side is going to make it
Yeah.
or make it come to make you feel complete.
Right. And a part of it, one of the things that we really understand, and we understood this earlier, was that one of the things Gil said, oh, I used to do that when I was empty. When Christ is not in your heart, there's things that you're going to constantly try to
Right.
use. And part of the reason why, and then, and is it generational? Yes. Is it, because the Bible says that the sins of the father will be visited to the second and third generation. Is it cultural? Yes. However, all those things are just explanations. They explain it, it doesn't excuse it. You still have the right to make a choice. And so I think about even when we were dating, Gil was talking about when we were dating, basically we were supposed to go out and he went and helped his friend at work.
This is the part that I was talking about where I was accused
He
of
was saying
cheating.
he was cheating. I didn't necessarily accuse him of cheating.
Did you think it though?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I just thought that you weren't where you
Well,
were
it felt
supposed to.
like it, y'all. It felt like it. You know how that feeling is? You like, oh boy, I'm in trouble about something.
You were in trouble because you weren't where you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and I was used to you doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I was upset about that. So no, it wasn't that I thought he was cheating. I was just mad because he didn't show up where he was supposed to show up at.
When I said I was
And when
going to
he
show
said
up.
it. So in the beginning of our relationship, there were things that we brought individually. So if you're single and you're not married, you need to be developing your integrity. You need to be developing your ability to be a person of your word. Because when you ignore those small signs, in our books we have red flags. When you ignore those small red flags, then they only are going to escalate. And so, are you a person of integrity? Even before I met Gil, even before I got saved, it was just certain things I wouldn't do. I don't want to be with nobody's husband. I don't want to be with nobody's boyfriend, because I always felt like the way you get them will be the way you lose them. And if someone will cheat with me, then guess what? They're going to cheat with someone else. And so these are just the kind of mindsets that we came into our relationship with. And remember, we were 20. Well, we started dating, we were 18 and
Right,
19.
right.
And so your character does not develop. It doesn't, it's a part of your makeup when you're younger, but it can change. You can,
Oh, yeah.
if you have made the wrong turn, if you have,
As they say, when you know better, you do better.
you do better. And so many times we don't know because we're allowing the media, we're allowing the people around us to shape our mindset about what marriage is. And it's till death do us part for a lifetime. And that means a lifetime of good and bad and highs and lows and lots of sex and no sex. And because if in really adultery, and one of the reasons why we don't cheat is because I took a commitment to the Lord.
That's a high commitment.
That's
Yep.
the first commitment, is to the Lord. And so cheating is not just about cheating on this person. You're also cheating on the Lord, and you're cheating on yourself. And so when we talk about why don't we cheat, it's more to it than just he's fine and
Right.
I love him. There has to be some internal things going on inside of your heart. And that's what we want to kind of really help you to kind of see and talk about. And although no, we have never cheated on each other, but we work with couples. We've done this for years. And so can you help somebody with something this big? Gil brought home a book yesterday, and I thought it was so beautiful. And so many times God will give you answers to your questions, but you have to be looking for it.
I think you go back, you made a couple good points in there. And if you got a good point to bring into the conversation, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
And definitely, Brian, thanks even for the affirmations in there. That high commitment that you have, these are the things that are actually established when you are single. You have to start saying this is the foundation that you build on how you are going to be in your relationship when you're single. Because what's going to happen is when you get into the relationship, that's when I was watching one of the car building shows. You ever seen them do some welding? And once they weld, then they actually have to do what? They have to take a grinder and start smoothing it out. Well, that foundation that you actually build as a single, the grinding happens when you get together with this
With
other
somebody
person,
else.
and they're going to start smoothing that thing out, because there are things that still need to be refined and changed a little bit, but you have to have the foundation already established there. That solid foundation has to be built to the point to where all this person is going to do is help you refine it.
Right. They're not going to give it to you.
No, because and you're going to be still developing it, but you
Yeah.
should have a foundation from it right at the very beginning. And just like Brian, you said you just finished talking about it. What were you guys actually talking about? What point that you guys were talking about as you are joining us here on the Rich Relationship Live? We've been out for a couple of weeks, and we joining you guys now.
Weeks.
3 weeks. She keeps saying 3 weeks, y'all. It's been a while. She was like, "We need to go live. We need to go live." I was like,
I
"Babe,
missed
we are
y'all.
on vacay."
No,
No,
I didn't want to go live doing
I
vacay.
had, she would have. I had to say, no, we need to take a break
Yeah.
because we had done sessions, we had done personal counseling, we had done the lives for, y'all know how long we have been going live every Saturday, and so sometimes you got to take a break, y'all.
Yes.
You got to take a break just to renew. But you made that point, and you said something else at the very beginning, the personal traits and character. When you think about that, kind of goes into the commitment side of things. When you think about the personal traits that you have, those are the things that you are establishing at the very beginning as that individual. But this is where the conversation goes to, do you think the environmental factors play a key in how you are shaping your personal character and your traits?
I believe that you're a product of your environment and your choices. And so you can't control everything about you. We have to be mindful of what we watch, what we listen to, who we listen to, how much time because one of the things our Pastor Lane used to always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Community is so important in you continue to stay on a course that brings God glory, because you need to be in an environment where your hopes, your dreams, your goals, your values are being known and encouraged and fostered, because we're human and we are prone to drift and we are prone to do the wrong thing. But it goes back to what Gil was talking about, the foundation. You have to make sure you're building your foundation on a solid foundation, which is Christ Jesus, and understanding that integrity is doing what's right when no one is watching you.
This is something we always talk about, is being self-aware. When you are thinking about it, you have to be self-aware to the point that even what your shortcomings are, or we call them growth areas. What are your growth areas? What are the areas that
You struggle
need to
with.
be refined and need to be shaped or need to be solid up or solidified when it comes to things that you are trying to model or assimilate into your relationship to be better for the person that you've decided to be in relationship with?
I want to talk about some of the practical things we have done over our time together, even as a young couple, and even now. One of the things that it had to be the Lord. We set boundaries. We set healthy boundaries. There are certain things we don't do. One of the things that we don't do is, I don't ride in a car or go on a trip with another man unless it's my husband. Now, we have friends, we all go out together as couples, but just safeguarding things like that. Even with Gil, I don't counsel men. Gil doesn't counsel women. My best friend is a man, but it's my husband. And so while you may think all those things don't matter, when you get married, are all your friends single? When you get married, you need to have married friends. You need to make sure that you're surrounding yourself. And so some of the safeguards, boundaries we've set is, I'm not going to go out to lunch with a guy by myself. It's just certain things I'm not going to do. And so what are some of the boundaries and safeguards you've set in your relationship to set you up for success? Because if you don't have a plan for, because the Bible says stay away from even the
Appearance.
appearance of wickedness. If you don't have a plan in place to protect your integrity and your relationship and your character, you're going to end up failing.
Yep, and I like what you said there, Brian, about learning how to become whole while you're single so that you'll know what to look for in a godly mate. That is so key because if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to find what you're not looking for. You're going to be, you're going to spend a lot of time on things that are going to be time wasters.
And I'm glad you said that, Brian, because something that the Lord was speaking in my heart when Gil was talking. So many times we have these lists of what we want the other person to bring. We also need to have a list of things we won't do.
AKA deal breakers.
Yeah, for ourselves. No, I'm not going to be talking on the phone with some guy, or no, I'm not going to be going out to lunch with a coworker. You need to have some things that you set up for yourself. So we have all these lists about other people, but what are the things we're doing to govern and operate in self-control in our own life? Because I think that we are so focused on what other people need to do, and we think of boundaries as a way to keep people out. But I believe the boundary is an inward swinging door, and boundaries keep you back, and it makes you use self-control. I don't think boundaries is just about you keeping people out. I think sometimes boundaries are about you being able to restrain yourself and say, I don't do that.
They're
Or,
just
I
things that
don't
I'm
go
not
here.
going to do. Yeah.
What are some things your I can't and I don't and I won't?
And it's not just about those can'ts, don'ts, and won'ts, about your individualism and things that you have just said, I'm not going to do. You have to have a same type of list for the things that you're not going to do in your relationship, because that's where that guard and that protection comes in place. Hey, brothers, perspective, how you doing? That is the things that actually come into how you're going to maintain and sustain your relationship before you even get into a place of growth, because those are the things in those areas that are going to be vital. It may not seem like it right now, because not only being self-aware and being conscious of your foundational principles and your personal traits, those are the things that are going to carry you over when the rough times come.
Right.
When the things of questionable behavior happens, and not just being like what Renee said earlier about me being late for a plate to our date when
We're
I was supposed to
18.
be where I was supposed to be. That was something that I had established. If I said I was going to be there,
He did it.
I was going to be there. I'm not going to say one thing, and then my behavior or my actions
Don't line up.
say something that is contrary to what I just spoke about. How many times have you met someone that their words and their actions don't line up? And then the question that you have to ask yourself is, which one do you listen to? The actions, or do you just listen to the words and make excuses for the actions when they contradict the words? KOA TV, hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
If you're just joining us on this episode, what we talking about, babe?
We are talking about why we don't cheat. And at the second part of this, we're going to talk about some things that you can do if you have cheated that will help you to build trust again. Because while we're talking about what we haven't done, and I'm grateful that that's not a part of our story, everyone is going to have something that's a part of their story that makes them who they are. So that doesn't mean it's because we're perfect or because we're special. It's because we made choices. And so if you made a bad choice, God is a God of grace and love and redemption. And adultery is grounds for divorce, but it doesn't mean you have to get a divorce. Because if the person can come to you with a changed heart and repentant and willing to go through the process of rebuilding, because the person who breaks trust has to be the one who works on rebuilding it. It's not the other person's responsibility to work on building something that someone else destroyed.
So we are talking about those topics, but we also, you mentioned it earlier about setting boundaries. We even said this earlier. Coretta, hey, how you doing,
Thanks for
Coretta?
joining us.
What are the boundaries some of the boundaries that you guys have set up in your relationship that says, you know what, we are in this together, and I'm going to protect our relationship. And it may not be something that just instantly pops, but in your mind right this second, but put it in the chat. It is things that you have already been doing or should be doing already in your relationship that you may have just already been doing it. And other people are like, whoa, that's not normal, or that's not something I ever thought about. One thing, we just finished working with some couples over a intensive weekend, and it was amazing. It was
Yeah,
awesome. It
they
was a
love
lot of fun.
God.
We always love working with couples in a one-on-one session. While we love the virtual
And
community,
we love
we
y'all.
love y'all for hanging out with us for this time. But when you are in a person's presence and they
It's
love marriage and they
powerful.
love building relationships like the things that we're talking about today, it's just something about it that reignites you.
It does.
It rekindles the flame even in your relationship, no matter how bright it is or how dim it may be, to where you say, you know what, we can be a good couple. We can
Yeah.
have a great marriage. We can have a great relationship, even if you're still in the dating phase. But there are things that you must do to build that.
Continuously and ongoing. You can't get lazy and say, oh, well, what it took to get that person, it doesn't take to keep them. Another way that we safeguard ourselves against cheating is always being available to each other emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Well, we're military. So, how do you do that when you're deployed? How do you do that when your husband is in another country?
Or if you're in a job that takes you away, how do you establish those connections when you can't be together physically? One thing that we had started doing, and y'all, we gonna tell our age here for a second. This is when snail mail was out. For those who don't know what snail mail is, that means you had to sit down and literally
With a thing called an ink pen
in
on
a
some
piece of
paper,
paper and
and put
write
it in
out
an envelope and put it on the stamp and send it through the mail.
and write it out, drop it in the mailbox, and then, just like I used to do, run to the mailbox
Oh my
after
gosh.
after about a week. Run to the mail, because if it takes more than a week, that's gonna bring some suspicion all in all of
Yeah.
itself. But it's like, man, the minute you get my letter, you better turn around and write me right back right there on the spot,
Yeah.
and put that thing in the mail, because it take 3, 4, 5 days for it to
It was
get to you.
7 then.
Well, 7, especially if you're in
Back
a
then.
deployed location, it's gonna take a little bit longer. And I think back to how excited you are just to
Yeah, it makes
get
me
this
wanna cry.
letter from this person, because it forces you to meditate
Yeah.
on the person that you love and care about the most. And you only have a certain amount of space on that sheet of paper. Obviously, you can have these. Y'all ever had them pieces of
See some
paper,
of these big
them
old
letters
letters this
that
big.
the envelope is all fat, and you are on legal paper. Thank God if you got some legal paper, because you got some extra lines then. But you shove this stuff in the mail, and you are holding on to every word.
Yeah.
You're looking at it and you're reading it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell the secret. I'm gonna expose myself here a little bit. You ever done this? You spray some cologne on it, on the letter. You spray cologne on the letter and hurry up and put it in an envelope. So when they open it, they get that whiff. And you're like, oh my God. Boy, I miss this girl like, woo. You didn't do that.
Oh, I used to put lipstick on it.
Oh yeah, see it
I
right there,
put
Brian.
kiss
Yes,
mark.
sir. All in caps. That's right. Yes, sir. And you have that Aramis or that Dracar, and it just woof.
Oh, he
and
said your car. That's my favorite.
You waft it up. But I'm sorry, y'all. We just got all off the topic right now.
But on all the levels, you have to learn to connect. And I can
Yes.
say the military has forced us to learn how to communicate through writing,
and
through talking, through being in each other's presence and being away, using a phone, using all of the ways of communicating. And without there being communication, there is no connection,
Yes.
which destroys the intimacy, which destroys the sex.
Oh man.
And so when you meet each other's needs and all these other levels, because just like we talk about the bank, if the only bank you're filling up is your sex bank, that's really, really not going to make as big of a difference in your life as it is with communication and emotional connection, spiritual connection, as well as physically being connected without it necessarily being sexual. And so I want to say something that I've learned over the years of us working with couples and walking through couples who've gone through adultery, is that it's not about sex. It's not about you not being enough. It's not about the value being on you. It's about that person having, because we all have a God-sized hole in our heart.
Yes.
And whenever we try to fill that hole
With
that
anything.
with God, that's supposed to be for God, with anything, it's never going to be enough. And so a lot of times people who have sexual addictions really are struggling with a lack of intimacy with God. And it could be psychological, it could be because they're of past traumas, but it's just understanding that don't take responsibility and feel as if it's your fault and that it's because you didn't meet their need. Because when that spiritual need is not met, you'll never be able to fulfill the physical need. And I think that when God fills us with his love and his purpose, it allows us to not put so much weight on the people we're doing life with.
Yeah, and it's so important that you hear that, because for the married couples, that is a part of why you don't cheat, is when you are sexually satisfied
Yeah.
with the relationship. And it's not just the actual physical acts that you go through.
But that is great.
I know, yeah, it is. But one thing that you have to think about is it starts long before the physical act of what you are talking about when it comes to intimacy
That letter
happens.
with the cologne
It's
on it.
all the things. Brian, don't laugh at her. I know you laughing, but don't encourage her, because it's gonna go off the rails. That's right. Don't put the capital R. See, I was like, should we even put this? Should we even put this as no? It's okay. So the sexual satisfaction has to be there, because when it doesn't happen, it's not because of something that Renee, like she said, that you didn't do. 9 times out of 10, it's because of the things that we have already talked about. The emotional disconnect is there, and it's going to manifest in the dissatisfaction. There are some people that have this self-awareness or lack of, that causes them to only think about themselves.
Yeah.
I love the analogy that Renee just used about the bank. If you're only putting things in the deposit bank of your relationship that only relates to you, where you're just being selfish in your relationship, that's going to breed discontentment in the relationship. That's going to kill the intimacy, and therefore it's going to manifest in the cheating.
Yeah. And there's more than just sexual cheating. It's one of the
Emotional
things that
connection.
it's also cheating the time. You have to learn, you're going to cheat somebody.
Yes.
You're either going to cheat your job or you're going to cheat your marriage. If you have to cheat someone in regards to your time and your attention, cheat your job, because somebody else can take your position, but no one else can be your spouse's mate except you. And so while we're talking about cheating, I don't want to just make it seem like you can only cheat sexually. You can also cheat emotionally. You can cheat with your time. And so making sure that you're giving each other everything that you need, because you need time, you need letters, you need calls, you need all of those things. And so we don't want to just make it seem like the only way you can cheat is to physically commit adultery by cheating, because you can also disconnect. You can also withhold your emotional needs,
or even your physical presence. And I think
Yes.
guys, this is one of the areas that guys we will spend more time at work. We will spend more time in our hobbies. We will spend more time with our bros, doing things that I hate to say it, but I hear guys talking about it sometimes guys talk differently when it's just us guys together than they do when it's a mixed company. And unfortunately, I think they end up speaking the truth a lot more. I have never, ever looked at my relationship with Renee as something that was a burden. When you hear guys talk about my wife this and my wife that, and it's not in the most positive light, that's sad to me. That says you're not doing your job as the leader and the head of your relationship to drive the commitment, because it starts with you. Everything starts with the guy. I don't care. You can't tell me anything different than that. The Bible tells me my responsibility in my relationship is to love and to lead.
So
What that means, I'm going to be the first to do it all. I'm going to be the first to, when we have issues and challenges, not that I'm going to be the source of those issues and challenges and problems, but it's going to be my job to lead, to say, you know what? even if she comes to me and say, we got a problem, okay, let's take care of this.
Yeah.
Let's look out for this, because he gives you a helpmate, a person that God knew that we would need.
And my job is to help and to submit.
Ooh.
And what that looks like is that I'm going to get under his leadership because all of the responsibility is on him. So submission does not mean I'm a slave and I don't have a mind or a brain. Submission means that the responsibility for what happens is on him. So I'm going to get under him to lift him up, to pray for him, to pray over his dreams and his hopes and his growth areas and his strengths. And and sometimes helping him means to say, hey babe, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? So submission doesn't mean you don't have input. Submission means you don't accept the responsibility for the consequences of the
Yep. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. If you're just joining us, we talking about why don't you cheat?
Why don't we cheat?
Why don't we cheat?
Why we don't cheat?
So if you're getting something out of this, give us a thumbs up, give us a smiley face, give us anything kind of response, and even put it in the chat. Some of the things that we're talking about, it's not all inclusive. These are just things that we have learned over the 30 plus years, 35 plus years of being together as boyfriend, girlfriend, and as husband and wife, that we have learned that is common, not just to Gil and Renee, but to all relationships.
Dating each other. We still are dating. Even all these years later, we still go on a weekly date night. We go on a couple's trip, just the two of us. There are things that you have to do, because when people say, oh, we drifted apart, drifting apart is a result of doing nothing, which is lazy. And so you can't make a decision to do something that's going to require you to give your mind, your body, and your strength to someone and not be willing to do just the practical things. I cook for Gil. I love to cook. I love to make sure he is eating good food. I want to make sure he's getting all the things he needs. So what are some of the ways you're serving each other? What are some of the ways that you're being available to each other?
So we were talking about it earlier about writing letters, and Brian put in there about, the cologne and laughing out loud. And one thing that we talked about was complacency. Even after you've been together for a while, we can fall into a rut. That's natural. This is something that will keep you from cheating, is when you don't fall into a rut. You remember back when y'all were dating, or you first met this person, if you're not married, you used to, how many of y'all picked out your outfit a couple days before you knew y'all were going out? You had to go, either you went to I'm gonna date myself again.
Tree.
You went to the mall or went to your local shopping. Before, we used to just order everything online. You used to look forward to going out and finding the right outfit. I don't know what it's like for the ladies, but I knew the guys.
We did the same thing.
In the words of that old movie, you have to coordinate. Your shirt got to match your shoes, the belt, everything has to be.
I think that's our generation. I don't think that okay, to the millennials, do y'all do that?
If you're out there, what?
Let us know.
Well, sometimes I don't know, because us old heads, as they say, them old school people, we got to coordinate everything.
Our shoes and our belt and our purse have to match.
Y'all know it's true. Everything has to look right together. These are the things we talking about that keeps you from cheating. If you ain't looking your best and smelling your best, you know what? That builds a complacency. That's going to be an indicator of, are you lazy? Have you gotten lazy in your relationship? And we are all guilty of it, especially after 30 plus years. Sometimes I have to remind myself, you know what? I need to step my game up and stop wearing that same shirt I've been wearing like 6-7 times, even though I got clothes that I've had for years.
You had clothes since Aaron was in
that's a whole
middle school.
But you have to really always be refreshing, because I just recently went and bought some new stuff.
And I was like, "Oh, baby, you look so cute."
Yeah, you walk out with something like, no, this was already in the closet.
"Oh, you look so cute."
This was already in the closet, y'all. Y'all know, act like you ain't never bought nothing new, knowing that it's new. Be like, I'm sorry, I still had the tag on. No, I'm just
One of the things Gil would do to me when we were dating, when I would have on something, he'd be like, "Oh, new shoes, new shoes, new shoes, new shoes, new shoes." So he used to always make me feel embarrassed to wear new things, because he would harass me. So I'm gonna start doing that to him.
But it was always in love, and now that I know I'm on the receiving end, I'm like, you better stop, girl. So put it in the chat. Those are some of the things that we are just sharing with you guys about what is it. You have to be proactive.
You do.
When it comes to not cheating.
Right. So talk about the stuff in that book.
Okay,
now.
well,
So now we're going to talk about, we're going to change
some of the action things.
some of the actions things you can do
So
if you have cheated.
yeah. So
and
what has
what
it?
you should do.
So what if it has already happened?
Yeah.
And that's the unfortunate part. And these are just some of the things that we have to share with our couples, that if it has happened, first you have to think about what it cost you.
Right.
Unfortunately, when you ignore or you don't give it its true weight of what it does in the relationship, that means you're undermining, or you're
being
trivializing.
selfish.
You're being trivializing the weight of what infidelity or cheating, or however you want to call it, what it costs you in your relationship. The first thing that it really costs you is trust.
Yeah.
You think about it. You've been dating this person for maybe years, and you have invested time, effort, and energy into building trust, to where we always say where you can be hot with this person,
Honest, open, and transparent.
to where now all of a sudden all that in a brief moment of time is gone.
Yeah.
That can be devastating in and of itself, one thing, but that's something that you have to keep in mind, that it is going to cost you something, and it is going to cost you intimacy. Those are two things that I think are so important in your relationship.
Credibility.
Those are all the foundational principles that we already talked about, what keeps you from cheating, or it's just so vital. It's just so important. And if you're on the receiving end of that, or you're the one that caused it, it starts out with knowing that it costs you something, but also taking responsibility for it.
Owning it, and not feeling as if, not undermining is that, well, if you would have did this. A person who really has a broken, contrite heart is not going to tell you that it's your fault that they cheated.
Mm-hmm.
A person who comes with the right perspective is, I was wrong, and I did, telling you what they did. Not that they got caught, but that they're telling you, but also giving you the right to ask questions, but knowing that too much detail can be unhealthy, because like me, I'm a visual person. Some things I don't do because I know, like funerals, I don't look at people when they're, but I'm going to see that forever. So you have to let the other person let you know what they need in regards to the amount of information. It shouldn't be, well, we can't talk about it, where you just tell them but you don't want to talk about it. You have to be willing to let them know that they can trust that you're going to give all the information that they need, and then give them the time to kind of heal and forgive, because forgiveness is not about the other person was right and you're wrong, or that it makes it go away. Forgiving doesn't make you forget.
Yep.
Forgiveness is, I give up the right to give you a consequence for what you did, because I'm going to let the Lord do that. Because at the end of the day, we have to, when we're under the authority of the Lord and submitting to Him, we understand that God is loving and just, and the way He's going to give someone a consequence is going to bring restoration and not destroy them. Because sometimes when we want to give them consequences, we want to punish them.
Oh yeah.
We want them to hurt like we hurt. But that's not
for us.
That's not, the Bible says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And so we have to make sure that we realize that we're married to another broken person who is human and who has a past and who has bends, and they're in an environment that could cause them to do something that could compromise your relationship. Not to undermine what they did, but to also understand that we all sin, we all fall short, we all make mistakes. And so it's just a matter of you having to decide in your relationship, is this worth us fighting for it, or are we going to go our separate ways?
So when it comes to making that decision, the Proverbs, I was just thinking about this. Proverbs 6 talks about it. It says, a man who commits adultery has no sense. And that goes for a woman as well. Whoever does so destroys himself. So you're killing yourself by even going outside of the relationship based on what the Bible has said. Renee mentioned it about the forgiveness side of things. Before you even start thinking about obviously the human side of us are going to kick in, where we start thinking about retribution and revenge and getting back, and you want that person to hurt like you're hurting. You have to first forgive them, but also have to forgive yourself, because so many times we've seen it to where the person who has been hurt starts replaying in their mind and taking ownership of this other person's
No.
actions. It's not. That is all on them 100%.
Right.
They knew exactly what they were doing when they were doing it. They have to take ownership of it. And a person who doesn't take ownership of it hasn't had that heart changed yet. But you have to go to the Lord, because in and of yourself, one, we can't change that person.
No.
That goes back to all the same things that we talked about
Character,
all the
integrity,
beginning,
a
the
relationship
personal
with the
traits
Lord.
and characters and relationship with the Lord, and being self-aware and having a honor system based on themselves first. This is a deficiency that person has for whatever reason. And I appreciate you guys chiming in and putting in here. And Dave, hey Cedric, how you doing?
Thank
Dave,
you.
hold on, I wanted to read that one. That one went by so fast. And thanks, Dave, for sharing this one. What you put, it disappeared. Did it take you back? Oh, it tracked the message.
Oh, what did it say?
I don't know. It just jumped back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but that's okay. I wanted to read it. I seen it flash up and I'll start to read it. So if you've been on that receiving end, these are just some of the things that we're kind of talking about that can hopefully help. It's nothing can soothe it like the Lord can soothe the
No.
pain.
No.
It's something that you're going to experience, and that's something that you unfortunately have to go through. And we pray for that healing that comes, but you have to take it to the Lord.
And the person on the receiving end, slow down and allow God to heal your heart before you make a decision.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be reactionary. You don't want to be impulsive. You want to let the Lord tell you what you need to do and not your friends. We always talk about this. Whenever you're talking about your marriage to someone, they should love God, love both of you, and love marriage. Do not share things that are going on in your marriage with someone who is, even if it's something as big as adultery, that is not something you're going to share with someone who can't be a safe place for you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if they've gone through it, that might be somebody you might not want to talk to, because they're going to share their pain with you and not purpose and not a plan.
You have to have wise and godly
Counsel.
That is so vital, that you don't want to be walking through this alone with someone that really can't. They don't have to have gone through the same situation
No.
to empathize with what you're going through, but they have to love you and want to see you whole again more than anything else. This person is not the linchpin to life.
Right.
God is the source. God is life.
Yeah.
So when you put them in their proper place, yes, it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Years of investment and time, effort, energy, and all those things, you have to be willing to say, you know what, I forgive them, and still move forward.
Yeah. And whatever that looks like, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. There are times where you can forgive someone and you may not reconcile, especially not right away. And so it takes time. Recovering from adultery is a long, lengthy process that is going to take you, your mate, the Lord, and someone on the outside to help you navigate it. Because sometimes people don't know why they don't know why they've done it, especially when it's something they've done habitually. They need to get the help they need to become healthy, so they can become aware of why they do. Because if you don't know why you do what you do,
you're going to repeat it.
You're going to keep repeating it. And so it's just important. This is why we really believe in the importance of seeking wise and godly counsel. We believe in therapy. We believe in having coaches and mentors and having people to help you navigate it, because we're human. And while this is not a part of our story, we still have lived through it because we work with couples for 20 years. And some of that could be one of the reasons why we haven't done it, because we see the aftermath
and
of
the
it.
damage.
We see the damage it does. We see how hard it is to rebuild trust when someone, especially if you're a visual person, because the thought of Gil being with somebody else would drive me crazy. And we used to, when Aaron was younger, we would always say, what would we do if the other person cheated? I would always say, I'm going to divorce them, or I would say, I would kill them, is what I would say. And then I realized we had to stop saying that, because I don't want to teach our daughter that if someone cheats on you, you can kill them, because you can't. someone cheating on you is really more of a reflection of their heart
Yes.
and their lack of intimacy with God.
And all the things that we gave you at the beginning of this video, when you have those, let's just call them growth areas in your
Well,
relationship.
that's a fall. That's not a growth
No,
area.
I'm talking about all the list of everything that
Yes.
we talked about before. When you don't have those things present in your relationship right now, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it may not even be with a person, like Renee said earlier. It could be cheating on
And pornography, it could be there. It could this can manifest
manifest
in
in
so
so many.
many different
Yeah.
ways. And so let's not give room to the enemy to destroy our reflection of who God is in the earth by us just doing some simple housekeeping and being honest with ourselves about the fact that when I said I do to him, that meant for a lifetime, not just when he's making me happy and doing the things I want, and when everything is for better and for worse. And so I think a part of it is understanding that while this is the culture and they want to normalize it and make it seem as if everyone, all men cheat, all men don't cheat, all women don't cheat. It's a choice.
And I love, Brian, that you put in there about temptation, and you actually kind of jumped on it before. You know, 1 Corinthians 10:13, the temptation in your life is no different from what others have experienced, but God is faithful. He will not allow to you for you to be tempted
Tempted
more than you
can
can bear.
bear.
So that tells us you already have it within you if you have that relationship with Christ, that it's already built into you to withstand it. But it also goes on to say in Galatians 5:16, I love this passage, walk by the Spirit and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. Ecclesiastes
Our
4:12.
Rich Relation Refuge, this is our scripture. It's based
and
on.
and this is why we do this, and we'll kind of end it here as it with this with I think it's good to end it on the scripture.
Yeah.
A
Or we can
person
let them answer
standing.
questions.
Oh yeah, you can answer a question. Put it in the chat. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken.
So that third person in that cord is Jesus. You cannot have a healthy, strong relationship without the Lord. And can you still fall and stumble and make bad decisions?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
you can.
It's called being human.
It's called being human. And so we're not doing this to call anyone out or it's to give hope, instruction, and guidance and community around the reality that while the world may say one thing, God has a plan for us. And if we could begin to walk in community and submission and obedience to his word, we can have the life he wants us to have. Because how many of you want to be miserable? How many of you
No.
want to be heartbroken? No one does. But if you don't put things in place for that not to happen,
Yes.
then it's going to happen.
So-
we want to give you guys a chance to ask questions.
Brian, thanks you for chiming in and hanging
love
out with us and
y'all.
putting it in the chat. For all those who've actually put in the chat and just commented, we want to be more interactive. We don't want to just sit up here and talk. I know this is not a two-way conversation, but it
can
kind of
be.
is. So
Yeah.
just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys, even hanging out with us. We are having a little bit of change in how we're doing things. We're not going to be going live every Saturday because there are some changes, and we'll let you know what those changes are. But there are changes that are happening in our own personal life that is giving us an opportunity to expand a little bit more when it comes to the marriage ministry overall. That Renee is going to get a little bit busier with some other things that she has in the oven, so to speak. No, she's not pregnant. That's the wrong word. I can't say
57.
that. No,
I'm not pregnant.
not that. Brian, we love you guys too. Thank you so much. But if you have something that you want to comment on, whether you're watching this live or even after the fact, put it in the chat. Dave, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for hanging out with us. Put it in the chat or even put it in the comments. And this is where Renee says all that other stuff about, because she handles all that, y'all.
Yeah. So if you guys like this video, please share it with other people. When you guys engage with the content, it helps them to know that there are people who want to hear this. And I know that there's billions and billions of content on YouTube. And so we're not trying to compete, we're complementing because we know that what we bring is unique to what God has called us to do. We want to be salt and light, hands and feet, because there's so much out here that we can get caught up in that's going to get us off track. Because whatever you watch, the algorithm is gonna keep sending you that kind of content.
Yes.
So if you're getting negative content, it's because you're watching negative content. If you want to fill your timeline and your algorithm with God's word and in purpose and encouragement, share our content, like it, send it to other people, leave comments. And so
Thank you so much, Sandra. We appreciate you too. Thank
we
you so
love
much.
y'all.
Is that tarot sage?
What they say?
It says left brain is all ego, right brain is the higher mother of yourself and the higher inner child of truth. But if you feed your ego, you only believe outside of you, not instead of believing in you in the inner God.
Yeah, it's really important that we have a sense of identity that comes from Christ, because so many times we make everything about us. And in Ecclesiastes, two is better than one. If we live our life only thinking about what we want, what we need, what we feel, what we think, and we're not open to feedback,
And serving.
correction, we're not open to someone saying, "Hey, I don't like that," we're never going to grow. Because one of the things that the Lord really helped me to understand is that people who blame never accept
Grow.
responsibility, and they don't grow. So we want to be the kind of people that when God brings something to our attention, that we can say, "Okay, Lord, I'm going to work on that," because we're never going to become the best versions of ourselves by ourselves.
So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. So thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for the comment. Thank you for the love and the hearts and all the other good stuff.
If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, share the video, leave comments, and we appreciate you being the most important part of our community.
Thank you.
Sandra and Brian and all of you guys who are watching, we love you guys and we missed you.
We'll see you guys 2 weeks. All right, later.
Thank you.